We're on.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. Can you guys see this slideshow so far?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this was a perfect intro to insurance. Thank you, Penny. That was excellent. I also really appreciate being here. This is what I do, is help people with existing operations and also people who want to expand operations. And a lot of what we'll do here and what I do is just guidance, talking to people, answering questions, and helping them get the information on my piece of the risk management, which is spreading that risk, so they can best figure out what they want to do, if they want to assume that risk, if they want to spread it, if they want to avoid it. So we will talk about a couple things. I'll give a brief intro to me and the agency that I work for and what we do. We're going to talk about different types of insurance, both commercial and farm, and also how they interact with your homeowner's coverage. And then we'll also talk about how you can go about finding proper coverage, whether it's through me or anyone else, just your guys' end, how to make things easier on buying insurance. Talking about looking at what you have and trying to assess that as part of the process, and then how to identify local agents and also brokers. And then we will answer anyone's questions. So we'll get started. So a little bit about the agency that I work for. George Petersen, founded in 1935. Northern California is where we operate and exist. We started with the logging industry, trucking, and have been entrenched in everything farms ever since. And 10 offices, there's about 200 agents, and we're the largest independently owned insurance agency in the state. So we're not owned by a bank or by a venture capitalist. So me personally, why I would be qualified to, talk about this. I've been in insurance now this is my 10th year, and I have some experience working for an insurance carrier nationwide. And I wrote personal lines with them, and then started with George Petersen Agency about 7 years ago and started writing commercial and farm. And I am originally from the Central Valley, Fresno, Bakersfield area, so I did grow up in the ag industry. I do have my agribusiness and farm insurance specialist designation. It's an extra certification that certain agents get to help to understand the farming process more in depth than just a standard licensed agent that just understands the product. So moving on to the more interesting things. So when we're talking about what you guys are all doing here, most of the insurance can be lumped into two different categories. One's the commercial liability, and then the other is farm liability. These are just some real rough notes on where these operations might land. And if you were going to be looking at one of these types of operations, whether expanding what you currently have or even starting one from the ground up, these are most likely the areas that you would search in. But there can be crossover. There are instances where you might need both policies just based on your unique operations and that specific insurance carrier, because they're all a little bit different and they all have slightly different appetites, but they also can be similar. So talking about a couple of things here, farmers markets, tours, cannabis, wine, beer, cider making, doing events like, wedding venues, temporary rentals, festivals, dinners, things like that. We would usually add commercial general liability to either an existing policy that you have or just a standalone one. And these can be pretty affordable. General liability policies start at about $500 per year, and they are based on what you do. If you had something like if you were doing everything on this list, which obviously no one is, but that would be quite the exposure, and there's no one insurance company that would pick up everything. So based on your operations, you might need multiple general liability policies to accomplish that, risk transfer. So, and that's where talking to the agent is really your guys' best bet. You're not, you don't want to dive through all the policy forms. You want to have an agent that will do that for you, that does this for a living, where you ask questions and they can answer them satisfactorily, and they can help distill that to you. So those are just some basics, and we'll circle back around and we can dive into specifics of any of these if anyone has questions on these. But we'll also talk about the individual insurance companies you might interact with. So the first step is you guys thinking about insurance. What do I do? How do I go about it? And where it starts is just to identify currently who you have. And why I bring up homeowners insurance is because some people will have just a homeowner's policy. Maybe they didn't have a farm before and they've been with the same agent for 20 years. And, they didn't ever really express to the agent there's this change. So first thing you want to do is just pull out your homeowners or your farm, if that's where you live, that policy, and then to identify who it is with. Farm policies will identify themselves as such, and farm policies are also homeowners policies. They're this hybrid where it has all of the things personal lines has, but it can contemplate farming exposures, and they are broader. So usually when I am sitting down with the person, I'm asking them about where is their home placed with, because most people live on the farms that they work, or they have some elements at their home, premise. And part of that first is to establish what they have, and then we talk about how to best proceed, because how you move forward can impact all your insurance, and there are better ways and there's worse ways to go about this disclosure to your agent. So most homeowners policies explicitly exclude any revenue generating activity. That is, if I'm selling something on eBay, that is, if I have an Etsy shop, if I sell produce at the farmers markets. Most of our true homeowners policies do not cover anything like that. And in fact, if they find out that we're doing that, they'll also cancel us, which puts us in a bind, and we don't want to be in that spot. And so you, as the insured, are placed in this difficult situation of needing to, fully disclose this information, but also what that might entail afterwards. And so we'll go on to the next slide to talk about calling the agent and discussing it. And there is a slide where we're going to talk about some of these insurance companies. And when you look at who you currently have, which category you'll be in, whether it's going to be easier for the agent or the company to adapt to your expanding operations, or if it's going to be a dead end and you might have to go find something else. But we'll talk about that specifically. So we'll go back here. So when you call your agent, one of the things that we always recommend is to try to discuss things in advance of them happening. For example, if I was going to open up a little roadside stand at my house, and if I call my insurance agent and I said that I have it going right now, and by the way, someone slipped and fell, and what do we do? Then based on who that agent is and what insurance company they work with, they might issue you a cancellation right there on the spot within 30 days, 60 days, saying, hey, we don't like this, we don't approve it, and we're not going to insure you anymore. So that's why we always like to say, call them in advance and ask them about, hypothetically, what if I were to want to do this? What if I wanted to expand? What if I wanted to start to sell eggs to my neighbor? What if I wanted to do some, temporary room renting out? What would that look like? And then the agent can then tell you what the process would be, because a lot of these situations can be black and white for them. So try to call in advance and ask hypothetical. If you say that you're doing something and that insurance company doesn't like it, then we need to be ready for what may happen next, and we can get into that. If you do find yourself in a spot where your current agent cannot help you, whether your current coverage ends up being jeopardized or not, there are situations where they might tell you, hey, look, this is great, I just don't have any markets that can do temporary rentals or that can do farm liability, so you're going to need to go elsewhere. And this is the most common situation people come across. And so what you're going to do is you're going to go online, and I do have a list here that I'll share with local reputable farm agents, specifically, because when we go online, we get 100 links, and I'll be getting calls from people, and they've called 10 agencies, and I'm the 11th, and they just aren't getting any help. So I can help you narrow that down, because who you talk to definitely matters in the answers and the solutions and the market access that they have for you. So when you talk with that agent, you do want to be full disclosure, just like Penny said, and get it in actual writing too. That is so important. A lot of times people think, well, my insurance policy hopefully covers it, and I just don't want to find out. I don't want the bad news. I don't want any more costs. It's already so expensive, and this is new to me. Well, most policies are, limited to the scope in which they were written. So if you have a farm liability policy, it most likely does not cover every single farming element, because they get priced accordingly for what you do. If you have a vineyard, or if you have livestock, or if you have horses, and if you don't have those things, or if you didn't tell the agent that you have those things, then we have to assume that there are gaps in the coverage. Sometimes things can still get picked up if it's not rated for that, but it is very important to make sure that the policy is rated for what you do. Otherwise, you might not have insurance coverage in the event of a claim. And sometimes that does mandate that you might need 2 insurance policies, or you might need to change companies as you change exposures. The insurance agent, for the most part, should be seamless, to where if someone does come to me and they say, Colin, I'm now doing this, I want to do horse riding lessons, and I'm going to do boarding, and I'm going to do camping, great. Not every company does that. So, but the agent should be able to say, not a problem, let me get you that quote that can accommodate that if we can't simply add it to the current policy. So that's what the process really should look like. And we'll then go into some of the names that people might recognize. Now, this is just a general list in Northern California. These are very common insurance carriers that we might come across. Most of the people on this call probably have one of these companies, and not all the companies on the left are all ag policies all the time, but the ones on the left are the ag markets. So when you're looking at your policy, because this is part of it, pulling out your own home owner's policy or your own farm owner's policy, and then looking who it's with. If it's with someone on the right, State Farm, Farmers, Allstate, AAA, USAA, Geico, all of them excellent companies, but they have limited appetites. They do what they do very well, and if you fit in the box, they can do it. One of the things to also keep in mind with these companies on the right that do not really write farm insurance, okay? If you are calling someone at a call center, okay, those people work specifically for the insurance company. They do not work for you. They work for the company. And if you tell them that you have something, if you call up Geico, for example, or even, AAA, USAA, they're all basically call centers now. And if you disclose something they don't like, then they're going to go tell the company right away, and the insurance company is going to issue a cancellation. When it comes to the State Farm and the Farmers, it is a slightly different situation, but they still work for the company. They're still obligated to look out for that specific insurance company's best interest, but they usually will have an office. So if you have a local State Farm or a farmer's agent, they do have some ownership in the relationship with you. And even though they might not be able to accommodate your new operations, and they might see that this is a problem, my insurance company doesn't want to do this, and I didn't know that they have, horse rides at their house. Oh my God. The farmers and the State Farm agents should try to help you pivot to the appropriate product rather than to pull the rug out from under you. So that is one thing just to keep in mind when you talk to the non-farm agents. In the other category, it is there are situations that can be similar, whereas, as an example, Nationwide, Grange, Liberty Mutual, also called Safeco, they all have personal lines products that are meant more for someone living in town. Like if I have a house in, say, Sacramento, they'll sell me a homeowner's policy. But they also have an agriculture product that's meant for this other farming exposure. We might not be with the right one, and that's okay. But that is where, once again, even in this situation, if you call, 1-800 Nationwide and you're just talking with the call center, then they might not have the ability to see that transition through, and they might just try to pull the rug out from under you also. So it's important to go sit down with your agent, and if you don't have the appropriate coverage, then they need to help you get it, or you need to immediately find someone who can. Now, we all know that property insurance is the most difficult thing right now. California's never gone through, a situation like what we're experiencing as far as the insurance markets go. This is all new. One example, just to paint a picture as to what's going on. Nationwide is the largest farm insurance company in the entire U.S. They insure roughly 50% of all farms. That means through the whole country, 1 out of every 2 is with Nationwide. Same in our state. They insure every other farm. Well, for years and years and years, they've been just the go-to market. They're the official partner with the Farm Bureau. They're excellent. Just this year, they have now come out and they've stopped writing monoline ag liability in our state. And so this was something really shocking. We have seen them and all the companies on these lists pull back with offerings for property for, say, tractors or, dwellings, our own personal homes, everything like that. They've been pulling back, raising prices, canceling people that have never had claims, that have been great clients, and due to the wildfire, right? Because they have all these companies lost so much in these fires year after year. But now it's even to the point where if I just have a garden and I'm on a 1-acre plot and I'm not trying to insure any buildings, I just have a little garden, they won't even do that because of the fear of fire spreading from my premise and going to a neighbor's premise and then getting drug into a giant wildfire claim. So Penny made an excellent point earlier on the, negligence aspect of the liability, and there is a lot of truth to that. But in our state, we also need to be aware there's the vicarious liability, which is the, famous situation of the kids, sneaking onto a person's property, drowning in a lake, and then the parents suing. And we would like to think, well, hey, I didn't know. I told them 1,000 times. I had no trespassing signs, but that doesn't always hold up. And we can still be brought into a suit. Even if we truly didn't have anything to do with it, we can be sued for anything. And having an insurance policy that will defend us and then go to court and assume those costs and try to make the case that we shouldn't be liable, that's really what this is for in these situations, is for defense costs and to have an insurance company have our back. For, frivolous lawsuits, even things that someone alleges they got sick from a product.
Colin, it's just Hannah here, just checking in. Would you be okay with a 5-minute warning? We want to make sure we have a few minutes for Q&A with you at the end. Would that be okay?
Absolutely. Perfect. So with these farm companies on the left over here, if you are going to go try to get, I want a farm liability product, or I want a full farm, maybe I'm with a homeowner's policy, or even maybe I'm with one of these companies and I'm being canceled or the price is too high, what are my options? These companies on the left are primarily the ones that will offer the farm liability and the personal liability, but these are shrinking to where, as an example, now if I have a new client walk in that has leafy greens, or they want to do a farmer's market, whatever it is, there's really 2 insurance companies on this list that will write farm liability now. They're all drying up. Those 2 would be Liberty Mutual, will write a brand new person, just farm liability, $500 minimum premium. The other one would be Colin, and they're one of the excess surplus lines, Lloyd's London type insurance companies. The other companies here on this list will not write just liability. They want the premium for the property, but at the same time, they have a high aversion to this risk. So people that are just now getting into the farm insurance market, it is harder than it ever has been, and it will require more diligence on your end to be able to get the right coverage. And that's just the sad reality of it. And one of the things to also keep in mind, this is important when you go approach your agents. If someone comes to me and they have a farm and it's ABC leafy greens, and I go out to an insurance company. I go to, Liberty Mutual, and I submit the application for you. Because all these companies on the left, all the farm ranch markets, you essentially have to go through an agent. If you want to buy just a personal lines homeowner's policy or an auto, you can probably call them on the 1-800 number. But when you start getting into commercial or farm, they're going to have you contact a local agent. And it's important to know that you don't want to call 10 different agents, not only for your time, but it's not going to help the other agents out either. And I'll explain sort of why that is. But basically, if someone approaches Nationwide Agribusiness for me, for my farm, Nationwide Agribusiness gets my application from the ABC agency, they're now locked in. Whereas if all my 10 other insurance agencies that I approach, they all go to Nationwide too, trying to be diligent in their search, they'll all get declined because it's essentially the first one in the door gets that market access. There are ways that you can, sometimes people will prematurely get with the wrong agent that they discover later that maybe wasn't very thorough, and they might have, not done a very good job trying to sell you to the insurance company, because that is part of our job. And then you get blocked, and then you might have another better agent that honestly may have been able to, get this done, can't do it for you. So it is important to discuss with the agent who they're going to be approaching, and you don't want to just give anyone your information, because they can mess you up, even to the point where it has happened where this same situation has occurred, where when I speak with someone, then I find out that the previous person didn't do them any favors, and I try to go unwind it with the insurance company, and they say, no, we're getting two different stories. One from you, this is what you say they do, and this other person says they do this. We don't know who to trust, so we're not gonna do this. So you are gonna want to choose carefully who you work with, and ask questions is very important. They should be able to confidently answer any questions you have. And I just have one more slide here, Hannah, and then we can get on to the questions. So this is a list of just a small list of local independent agents and also brokers that I would say are all excellent and all have the ability to specialize in the ag industry. You can go Google, and there's 100 other insurance agencies out there, some of them bigger, some of them smaller, but these are big names. Some of you guys might be with these people here. And it's also important to know that where their offices are located has no real bearing on their geographical footprint, that we can write in every state, every county. These are all excellent companies, and but they will have different specialties. For example, MIV, Napa, they do primarily wineries and they do vineyards, and Motzi agency does a lot of equine and does horses. So part of it is just doing a little research on your own, and poking around and seeing who you want to talk with, and you might call an agent and you might get someone at the agency who doesn't know what they're doing, because sometimes that happens too. If you don't feel comfortable with them, then that's okay. You can call someone else, but that's an important step in the process, who you trust. So really, that's kind of it. I've been rambling for a little bit, so I can certainly take questions you guys have. If anything specific Or also, if anyone wants to reach out to me after this, I'd be happy to talk to you. I don't have to write your insurance. I'd be willing just to share with you what I know and try to point you in the right direction.
Thank you so much for that, Colin. So we have some questions that have entered in the chat, and then if folks have other ones, you feel free to add them in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand either in real life or using the raise hand icon that you should see at the bottom of your screens, that works for us. So let's get started. Colin, the first one we had was, would you be able to find coverage for adding a cabin rental lodging operation to a farm policy? Would this be difficult, and how much would it cost?
So I want to read, okay, would you be able to find coverage for adding a cabin rental lodging operation to a farm policy? Absolutely. Those are specifically perfect for that. Farm policies understand that there will be, and these are actually very special policies that can, contemplate 5 different families on the same policy. So you have mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, son, daughter, everyone's cars on the same policy, everyone's houses, different addresses, tenant occupied dwellings. They are very comprehensive. So yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
How much would it cost? Difficulty for it. Difficulty would be primarily on the insurance company's appetite. If you have an existing farm policy, like we have many clients that do, and they go either buy a cabin or they go try to add one, it would simply come down to whether the insurance company likes that space. And sadly, what that looks like now is they run a brush fire map, and if it shows up red on their screen, then they say, no way, no how, not at any price, thank you. And then what we have to do is we then discuss, because times are much harder now than they ever have been, we then discuss placing on a standalone policy by itself that understands that, or to move the entire farm package. Sometimes that makes sense to try to move it, but that can be more difficult just depending, because there's a lot more moving pieces. To add a dwelling to a farm policy might be $1,000 a year, $700 a year. To buy a standalone policy for that, depending on where it's at, it could be $1,000 up to $5,000 a year.
Thanks for that, Colin. And following on from some of the response you gave there, I'm seeing a few questions in the chat, unsurprisingly, around wildfire and how that's changed the insurance. What about this one here? Nowadays, the fire risk seems to be causing problems, risk to homes and buildings. How to keep from getting a rate hike or cancellation? Maybe you've just covered some of that, but have you got anything to add?
Absolutely. I wish I knew. So I got canceled as well by my insurance company nationwide, and I used to work for them, and never had a claim. And I now pay 3 times what I used to pay just a couple of years ago for my home, and it is with less coverage. And I begged, pleaded, and put a brand new roof on my house, trimmed up all my trees, sent pictures in, did my best, and it was no luck. And what it's coming down to is that there are sort of guidelines where the underwriter used to have the discretion, where they'd say, hey, look, this we can tell these are great clients. It might be a little far out there, but we want to write this. We feel good about it. We're going to take this gamble. Now the underwriters are no longer getting that authority. This is being dictated by the people in an office on the East Coast that are saying, no, you can't write in the red area anymore. So it's how to keep from getting a rate hike or cancellation. I would say less is more. I'd say raise your deductible up to $5,000, maybe $10,000, and don't turn in small claims and share in that risk. We don't want to be seen. We don't want the attention drawn to us, because we are getting lists now years in advance that are saying, hey, look, here's 300 people that we're going to cancel, and we will not reconsider under any circumstances. Even if it's even if you clear cut the whole property. So that if that gives you an idea.
Yeah, following on from that, there was a question about, didn't the state of California jump in and offer insurance for homeowners who couldn't find any coverage with insurance companies?
Yeah, so that is with the California Fair Plan, and they have been around for a while, and really it is a private market that is regulated by the state, but it is very expensive. So I mentioned earlier that I'm paying 3 times what I was paying before, and my next quote, the only other quote I had beyond what I bought was the Fair Plan. And, the Fair Plan would have been 4 times what I was actually paying before. So really it is the truly last resort carrier, and there's a lot of gaps, and it's really mainly for fire and lightning and things like that, and smoke. So it isn't much help, but in some situations it is literally all there is right now, sadly.
Thank you for explaining that. I think that's really valuable. Also, we had a couple more going back to the kind of lodging. What's the difference from the insurance point of view between lodging versus Airbnb or VRBO?
Yeah, so VRBO and Airbnb is seen as definitely higher risk, just because people coming and going. Whereas if you have a long-term tenancy, that's very straightforward. Most insurance companies will write a standalone tenant-occupied dwellings very easily. They don't ask too many questions, but once you mention Airbnb, VRBO, they start to run. And then usually we need to pick that up on commercial exposures or on a farm, because personal lines policies do not like that exposure. There are some exceptions though. So always talk with your agent about that.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Colin. Last one here, I think. For a cottage food license, would this fall under commercial general liability if it's not part of an existing ag policy? There's a little bit more to that, but yeah, let's start there.
Yes, it would. So anytime that you change a product, so if I grow an apple and I sell an apple, that's farm liability. If I turn it into an apple pie, that's now general liability. So anytime that we are preparing food for another person, it's seen as like a restaurant exposure, and that would be general liability.
Got it. Could that ever be added onto a homeowner's policy?
No, it actually cannot. Now, homeowners policies do have liability. For example, if I have a garden and I give is the key word, produce to a neighbor, if I'm not generating revenue and they get sick, little Timmy's got to go to the hospital and I get sued, then the insurance company will go to bat for me on that. And same if I, cook a dinner for a friend and they allege, there was salmonella, something like that, and they had to go to the hospital. But once I start generating revenue, even if it's not profit, but once I start operating a business, homeowners walks away at that point.
Okay. And then the last part of that question before I hand back over to Penny is, do you have any strategy for anybody who's in that situation? If, say, they're baking cookies to sell at the farmer's market or the farm stand, any suggestions?
Absolutely. So usually with those cottage food licenses, they mandate that you use a commercial kitchen, and so you can lease something like that. But either way, or even if you're doing it at your house, sometimes people get away with that. You can get general liability. You will not usually be able to add it onto your existing policy. But even if I have a home business, even if my homeowner's insurance doesn't like it, we as insurance agents, we can write general liability for your operations at your home as well, usually at the $500 minimum premium.
Got it. Great. And so we've got the address in the chat and Colin's email address as well there. Colin, thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's lovely to have you join the session, and I'll hand back over to Penny.
Okay, thank you guys so much.